Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome again to round 2 of the Live Wire today here on Inside UNC Charlotte. We appreciate you either joining us now or sticking with us after our first round just a short while ago. It's kind of a first to do 2 shows back to back, but we're more than happy to give anything a try here on the Live Wire. And today, our next guests are going to tell us about an event that's coming up on campus that is increasingly of interest to an increasing number of people on campus. And if it's not on your radar, it might well should be. And we're going to find out a little bit more why as we talk to Sarah Edwards, who's the Assistant General Counsel here at UNC Charlotte, and Jesh Humphrey, who is the Deputy General Counsel. And by those titles alone, that's your clue that they are in our Legal Affairs office. And they are part of our university's staff of attorneys, and the event that's coming up on campus is the Legal Symposium. And if you look at the Legal Affairs website, one of the things that jumps out is that you actually have a listing called Legal Symposia, which reminds us that you've been doing this before and you're doing it again this year. But give us the overview of what the Legal Symposium is, when it is, where it is, and why we are doing this.
Well, thanks, Stephen. This is our 3rd annual Legal Symposium. This year we're holding it over in the Sac Salons. It's an all-day event. We're starting with a continental breakfast, pulling through for some lunch, and going into the afternoon. Last year we did a half-day event, and then the year before we had another full annual session, our annual inaugural event. This year, it's October 16th, 2014, so we encourage everybody to show up. We'd love it if you'd give us a heads up that you're coming, but we encourage people to drop in too if they've got a chance to enjoy any of the sessions that they might have interest in. So.
And we'll talk about those sessions in a minute, maybe just go through them and touch on the topics that will be discussed. But an overall comment on the state of affairs at a university like UNC Charlotte is that the role of the legal staff continues to expand. And is that just the times in which we're living? Are we unusual here at UNC Charlotte or in the UNC system as far as how we approach all matters legal, all matters compliance, or are we just in keeping with what's required at a university like us?
Well, I don't think we're unusual. In fact, we just got back yesterday from a system-wide meeting with all of the schools. Each and every one of the 17 constituent institutions of the UNC system has a legal office. We're not the biggest, we're not the smallest, but for 27,000 students and 3,000 staff, I always compare it to running a city. I mean, we really do have a small city here, and any legal issue that can go on in a small city goes on here.
So in a city is a lot of dimensions and a lot of people. And Sarah, can you give us the overview of the legal affairs staff here at UNC Charlotte in terms of the number of attorneys and the areas that you cover, and then the areas that you personally cover? I assume it's divided up. Each person has your own areas of expertise.
I mean, so it is divided. I mean, one of the good things about practicing in higher ed is that because there's such a range of topics, we have to do a little bit of everything. But we have sort of divided it up. There are 5 attorneys. One of them is Amy Kelso, who's out in Asheville. So she telecommutes and she does mainly transactional work, and she works with specific clients. Jeff Jensen works mainly with staff matters and real estate matters. Jesh does a lot of the faculty issues and risk management type issues. Dave is more on the IP, intellectual property, technology transfer, that kind of stuff. And then I work on contracts and also compliance issues. So that means I've gotten to do a lot with the Title IX, explosion of issues there. And our symposium actually has, I think, 2 different topics that are Title IX related. And I know that Dawn Floyd was on here earlier talking about how that is such a focus of the university attention right now.
All of these areas, I suppose, on any given day can bring about an intense workload, and maybe days when you, like some folks in other areas, wonder, boy, when will when will this ever, ease up? But is that a perception that the issues that come to your office are, mounting with each passing year, and is a lot of your work preventative, or is it
I think
because we need you now?
I think it runs the
Both.
gamut, but
Yeah.
I think you're exactly right that the regulatory expectations of
Yeah.
institutions for higher education has been increasing, and you rarely see a politician campaigning on a platform of deregulation of
Yeah.
institutions. So those things do mount over time. Traditional areas that have been reserved for institutions of higher education, like student affairs issues, Title IX issues, are getting increasing scrutiny at the state and federal level, and that means, for better or for worse, that requires some legal input into some of those issues sometimes. So we've added attorneys over the years to address that. We've added a Office of Compliance, of Institutional Compliance. Sue Burgess, who is our new Director of Compliance, she just started
Yeah.
a couple of weeks ago, reports directly to Dave Broom, and that's housed in our office as well. So we're responding to that. Some of it's preventative. We certainly prefer to deal with things on the front end rather than on the back end, but a lot of it's just jumping through the hoops that are set up in front of us.
And that's part of why the symposium is taking place, is so that we can do a little bit more prevention, so that we can make sure that people are on top of the legal issues that specifically affect their work, and then maybe we don't get quite as many phone calls that are putting out a fire.
Well, and most of us who aren't attorneys on campus, and most of us aren't attorneys on campus, would probably be thinking that if I have any interaction with you or other members of the legal team, it's probably not a good thing, or something's gone wrong. But like you said, there certainly are opportunities to provide sort of proactive, preventive counsel. But let's just say, hypothetically, because I'm not, but if I were a rank and file faculty member, why would I need to know or be aware that you're here and the services I'd most likely need to call upon one day from your office? Let's just say I'm a typical faculty member with some research going, and I teach, and I'm interacting with students. What do I need to know?
And that again is, there's a broad swath of issues that are important to faculty members, and many of them are going to be addressed in this symposium. Title IX, for instance, is just a burgeoning field of landmines, and under our interpretation of the guidance that's come out from the Office for Civil Rights, our faculty are responsible employees, which means that if a student comes to them with a Title IX related issue, they have certain responsibilities, and we're going to go over some of those responsibilities in the symposium. We're doing our best to get out in front of faculty through orientations, departmental meetings, anywhere they'll have us to talk about those responsibilities and how best to address
And do you feel
them.
like it's understood across campus among the faculty, we'll talk about staff in a minute, but among the faculty, that this isn't just something that is reliant on chain of command, in the sense that, well, if my department chair knows what the legal issues are on Title IX or any of the other areas related to compliance, that's great, because she or he will tell me what I need to know. It sounds like what you're saying is the symposium specifically, and an awareness of what you're here to do generally, is something that everybody should start to be tuned into.
Right.
I think that's absolutely right. I understand the idea that if folks see us, they're not really happy about it, or they think that something might be wrong. What we would love to do is change that perception, or cultivate a relationship with faculty, with staff, even with students who are in employee positions, that we're here to help on the front end of these issues, so that you can avoid some of the pitfalls and some of the more difficult stuff as they arise.
What's your perception about this university and the culture among the faculty and the staff, as far as the awareness of what you're here to do and how you're viewed. Are you viewed as on one end of the spectrum, a necessary evil, or why do we have to worry about that? This is higher education, to I'm in tune, I'm savvy, I realize there's a lot going on that's going to involve things that I don't want to involve, so I'm going to be sure I know what's going on with the Legal Affairs Office.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it depends on the person. Some people probably view us.
Is that like an old school, new school?
No,
kind of thing?
I don't know. But I think what's really good about the symposium and then, other training sessions is that a lot of times after those, I get phone calls from people who say, oh, I saw you, present, or I saw you talk about this issue, and now I know it's okay to just pick up the phone, ask you this quick question, instead of, pushing forward and then having to having to worry about something later.
Yeah, because out in the world, if you want to call a lawyer, boy, that's going to cost you. It's going to be a hassle. You guys you're free.
Yeah, exactly.
Or cheap. You get what you pay for. But, having visited other institutions and speaking to my colleagues at other institutions, I think we're really blessed at UNC Charlotte to have a true system of shared governance where faculty and administration, for the most part, work hand in hand on issues, and there's mutual respect, trust, that one side isn't out to get the other, and that's not always the case in higher education. So we have great relationships, I think, for the most part, with various department chairs, deans, and individual faculty members. And the hope is, once you pick up that phone and give us a call and we give you a helpful answer, you'll spread the word, be willing to do it next time, and encourage your colleagues to do it too. Because you're absolutely right. We love getting those phone calls, and the price is right.
All right. Well, we're speaking on the live wire with Sarah Edwards and Jesh Humphrey of the Legal Affairs Office, and the reason they're here today is to tell us a little bit more about the upcoming and now annual Legal Symposium here on the campus of UNC Charlotte. And I'd like to go to the web now and just to go to a page that's on the Legal Affairs website that should be of interest to the folks who are watching today. You'll find on the Legal Affairs website the outline of the events that will be a part of the Legal Symposium, the topics that will be covered. And what I thought we'd do is just kind of touch on these topics, and not to put you on the spot to go into great detail on what will be discussed, but just kind of give us a thumbnail sketch about what kinds of information will be part of these sessions, and particularly then, is this more of a faculty audience or a staff audience or an all-concerned audience? And again, the symposium is on the 16th of October, which is next week. That would be
a week from today.
A week from today, right. And at the SAC, not on the first floor, but upstairs, right?
Upstairs, in the salons.
In the salons, sure, okay. So again, going to the Legal Affairs website, as I hope folks will do, either now or afterwards. The first topic, understanding sexual assault, relationship violence, and stalking, and creating an informed campus culture. Again, this touches on some of the things that we talked about with Dawn a few weeks ago related to Title IX and the Violence Against Women Act. Mm-hmm. These issues under this one item are they increasingly an issue, or is it just, are we talking about a situation where the reporting of them creates the sense that it's a growing issue, but maybe it really is more, we're in an atmosphere where folks are being more encouraged to report when bad things in these categories happen?
Yeah, I mean, obviously the media has been really vocal and bringing attention to these issues, and so that, of course, has helped the issue get raised awareness on campus. But we have seen that since Dawn's been hired and has been out there and sort of explaining her job and the university's job, that people have felt more comfortable reporting incidents that have occurred. And I think that's the hope. The hope is that we would learn the information and be able to provide resources. So that's what that topic's going to be about. It's going to be Dawn Floyd, the Title IX coordinator, and then Nicole Madonna Rosario, who is an interpersonal violence specialist in the Wellness Promotion Center. And they will be talking about the issues, I think, very broadly as far as how how an incident may affect a specific person and the resources that are available on campus, and then also how various faculty and staff, can respond. So I think it'll be a very helpful one. That one and the NCAA topic are both our larger sessions. They're over an hour, so they should be really thorough and really interesting.
I think one thing I assume that is very important in those scenarios that you'll discuss and that will be discussed in that session, the role of a faculty member or a staff member or any member of the university community who is being the recipient of a disclosure of somebody reporting something to them. It's really important, and we won't go into that detail now, but I assume then part of the presentation will be what are the expectations, obligations, requirements of those of us in the university community should somebody come to us and disclose a report of an incident.
That's absolutely
That's
right.
pivotal, right?
That is, that's something that Nicole and Don will both be talking about. And equally as important will be how we can connect victims of interpersonal violence and sexual violence to resources that are available on campus, where to point them. So there's the legal obligation and there's the ethical obligation. And Nicole and Don do a great job of marrying both of those.
Mm-hmm.
When we talk about those issues, I think for the most part in a university community, we tend to zero in on instances within the student population. But you would probably also have something to say at the symposium about instances among the faculty or among the staff, or potentially even things that might be part of their domestic situations that become part of the campus community under the wrong circumstances in this case too. So
sure, the explosion of guidance that we've received over the past few years has mostly focused on Title IX, which is a student-oriented statute. But you're right. Title VII of the Civil Rights Act protects sex discrimination in any form,
and the Violence Against Women Act
Correct.
Added some obligations for us when an employee reports being a victim of domestic violence or sexual assault. So, as Jesh was saying, we have certain legal obligations. We also have certain ethical obligations, and so I'm sure that Nicole and Dawn will respond differently depending on what who's involved in the situation. But I think the main point is that we want to get the right people to the right resources and get the right process in place.
So attendance has been steadily increasing for the symposia, and is it the case that it's individual staff members, or are you seeing groups of staff and faculty members coming as teams, or what kind of audience have you seen, and what would be great to see this year as you expand and change the dimension of the folks who come?
It's really been all over the place. I think if it's marketed more within a particular college or department or unit, we might see more of them, but Academic Affairs has done a great job helping us market it. We've done what we can from our website and from platforms like this one.
Sure.
And we see staff, we see faculty, we see interested students who wander by, student leadership. We see colleagues in Cato, we see colleagues that across the street. So it's really all of this stuff. There's not a single. Maybe you might not be interested particularly in athletics. You might not feel like that affects your life, but there's something that we're going to talk about that does.
All right. Well, let's go back to the list of topics, and on the topic of the changing NCAA landscape. You've touched on this a little bit, but just tell us in maybe a little bit more detail what are the issues that will be covered in this, and is this of interest if I'm here on campus as a staff member or a faculty member, and I know that athletics are part of the university life, but maybe I don't quite understand why they are, or what are the issues that Legal Affairs would want to tell me about the fact that we're an NCAA Division I institution?
Well, that in and of itself, our transition to particularly adding football and transitioning to Division 1A or FBS football brings some interesting institutional wrinkles. But I think what spurred this session was a recent federal court case, a decision there that really has the potential to change the landscape in terms of financial aid support to athletes, how we think about athletics and student athletes within the organization. We're going to have our Director of Athletic Compliance, Scott Bird, talking there. We have a graduate fellow, a legal fellow in our office, Catherine Mitchell, who also has her master's degree in sports administration and has been heavily involved in athletics for the past several years. And Dave Broom, the three of them are going to be talking about that case, the White versus NCAA case, and other issues related to athlete compensation. I think is probably going to be the major topic.
Interesting time to be at a university like this that is on such a growth trajectory as we are, and becoming a big-time university with big-time college athletics, and so that should be an interesting topic. FERPA is something that I suppose even folks on campus who feel like they are as well versed in FERPA as they could be probably still find themselves with issues of surprise over the course of a year, and that's is it the case that it's unfolding, or is it just kind of the more we know, the more we realize so much we don't really know?
I think it's really interesting because FERPA is one of the laws that has not changed that much.
Yeah.
But anytime we do these symposiums, that is what people are asking about. They want to know more about FERPA, or they want to get their specific example, answered. And so Jesh gets to handle all that fun stuff.
I actually had a FERPA issue crop up this morning that I was dealing with, and I think the reason that even though the law is unchanging, we live in a very vibrant and
we're scared.
Just in every situation that comes to our office is different, and that means that we've got to be thoughtful and creative about how FERPA is applied to protect student records. We want to place student privacy first, but we also want to place student security first, and those things don't always line up in a way that's easy to interpret.
Now, you started to bash a stereotype there when you said we want to be creative because you're attorneys. Are attorneys at a university allowed
creative
to be
within
creative?
a very small box of no. We that's something that we try to pride ourselves on as an office. Is I think a lot of lawyers are perceived as the red tape and telling you no. We want to figure out a way to get to yes, and do so creatively. If we have to say, look, this isn't tenable this way, we're hopeful that we can say, but here's another way you can think about this.
I think the more you do these symposia, the more you're going to realize probably need to be more of you, because so many people are going to realize that you are approachable and accessible, and your phone will be ringing off the hook.
Well, that's the
the
goal.
hope, yeah.
That's right.
Talk about this next topic that will be discussed at the symposium, titled The Contract Checklist, and is it really your friend? Or it really is your friend.
Yeah.
What kind of contracts?
All of them. I mean,
Yeah.
we have a few. Well, we have on our website this long list of items that if people look at a contract, they should go through and sort of see, is there a provision that completely goes against state law, or maybe is something that we as a university don't want to accept. And we try to put it out there because our office doesn't see all the contracts that come through the university. We try to, but sometimes different units handle them internally and that kind of thing. So we just want to make sure that folks understand that there's this tool out there that's available, that is really easy to go through. And again, like Jesh was saying, we don't want to say no. We want to help people get to the right place, and so we'll also talk about things that we can offer. So we don't just say no, we can't agree to that provision. We also say, but here's a happy middle ground that we can agree to, and that hopefully will also meet the needs of the other party.
Are contracts, generally speaking, an area unlike FERPA where there is a good amount of change from one year to the next in terms of what we can do, what we can't do in
We've
our
had a
contracts?
few additions in the last year or so from state law about
Yeah.
things that are required to be in contracts that did not used to be required, and so we do have a couple of new things like that. But a lot of it is dependent, like you said, on the type of contract that comes through. We have affiliation agreements. We have property contracts, purchasing contracts, things that are called a memorandum of understanding, and
Yep.
that doesn't always ring a bell, but that is also a contract that needs to go through the same process. So we just want to make sure that the folks out there have the right tools
To know what is a contract.
yeah, and to at least be able to recognize things that they may want to call us and say, legal, what should we
Sure.
do here?
Sure.
So,
I mean, contracts are words, so people can write whatever they want on a piece of paper, and words mean things. So they don't always take the form that you might think they will. So Sarah is
Right.
available. One of the big things that we deal with is indemnification. There's all sorts of rules about what we can agree to, but indemnification might not fall in a contract with this big bold heading of indemnify me. It
Right.
might look a million different ways. It might be worded a million different ways. So Sarah does a great job of leading people through the thought process of what it takes to identify indemnification and other provisions in the contract.
All right. Field trips and off-campus activities is probably another one of those areas where if there's not a certain amount of fear associated with them, that maybe there ought to be, or maybe again, if we have proactive conversations with the legal staff ahead of time, we who might be in positions to do those kinds of things maybe feel a lot more confident about it. But I suppose that this is an area where there are definitely issues to stay on top of.
and well, I was just going to say, I mean, one of the reasons that this specific one was added this year was because we've gotten a lot of questions about it, and we
Yeah.
get the phone call fairly often, and we do have some guidance on our website, but we just decided it was good to have the in-person conversation and let people be able to ask questions and that kind of thing.
And I think this is the one session, all of them will have interesting topics for faculty. This is really specifically geared towards faculty and the things that they might want to think about, the processes that we've got in place.
Do you have any idea how, if at any given time, how many UNC Charlotte groups are off campus in an organized way in the name of a class? I mean, is it like
No,
More
and
than-
that's part of the
That's
problem.
yeah. I mean,
Well, it happens often,
Yeah.
and it
like
you
one
know,
a day or several a week?
I
or-
imagine that's probably
Yeah.
that's maybe even on the low end, and some of the things that we traditionally think of field trips as like going to the Smithsonian and
Yeah.
walking around,
And you
but
rent a bus or something. but I
Right,
think
exactly.
You're talking about students show up here, and
Sure. So there's
on
all
your own
sorts of
means or-
situations.
yeah.
Let's have our next class at a Starbucks.
Yeah.
That really is, you're asking students to go somewhere off campus. You're asking them to get there somehow. What's your responsibility as a faculty member if a student, God forbid, gets into a crash on the way there? So there's a lot of things to think about.
And see, in my day, as an undergrad at a large state university, it would not have been at all uncommon, particularly among if a grad assistant's leading a class. So, hey, let's get together for class, at a coffee shop.
Absolutely.
Yeah, but and we wouldn't have thought anything of it. Oh, sure, I can be there. Yeah, that'd be great, and it'll count as class. It'll be fun.
Which all might be true.
But times have changed, I guess. And
Well-
have they changed because they've had to have changed, or have they changed because we have a lot of lawyers around?
It's chicken and the egg, I think. I think people are more litigious generally.
Yeah.
I think that there are a lot more things that can go wrong, maybe, these days.
Are there, or I mean, as far as what might happen at the hypothetical coffee shop, maybe or maybe not, but what somebody could make out of what happened at the hypothetical coffee shop, I guess.
I think that's right. I mean, we live in an age where there's a lot of information and it's
Yeah.
easily accessible, and information is great, but it also gives people false impressions, wrong ideas, right ideas that aren't great for us, but all sorts of things. So.
But if I post a selfie having a great time at the coffee shop and then I turn around and say something bad happened, no one will believe me, right?
That's I think that's exactly right, and that that's social media is and the proliferation of knowing what everybody is doing at any given time creates a lot of interesting legal issues.
And I realize we could spend an hour talking about that kind of thing, but I do expect that at this symposium, social media, all forms of electronic or digital communication will probably be evident in every one of these topics.
It really will. I mean, looking at the list of topics, I mean, athletics, that's a major compliance issue. FERPA, we've recently changed our policy to reflect really social media and how it's used institutionally. So it'll be a common thread, I think.
Yeah. Well, I don't want to cut short the attempt to go through each of these topics because I do think that by touching on them, folks who are watching will probably hear at least one or two that will pertain to their immediate work here on campus. But we can maybe fly through these at a faster clip here just for the sake of time. But the next topic on the list at the upcoming symposium is the Fair Labor Standards Act and what we need to know at UNC Charlotte. Who is affected by the Fair Labor Standards Act, if not everybody?
I mean, it's an employee issue. I mean, Jeff Jensen's going to be the one.
So how do you
who's
break
dealing
that
with
down into a session? It's like, here's something for everybody, or is it for supervisors? Or
It's probably, go ahead.
Oh, it's mostly for supervisors, but it will also be for for employees who are wondering about their obligations and their rights, particularly SPA employees. There's been some proposed changes in regulations to exemptions for what we think of as traditional 40-hour work weeks for SPA employees. There's a swath of pitfalls, I guess, that folks can fall into with respect to time cards, with respect to use of phones and technology off the clock, and Jeff is our institutional guru on those issues and is going to address some of those and then take questions and clear up some misconceptions.
sounds like a symposium unto itself.
It really is.
Yeah. Public Records Act. It affects more than you think. I would imagine one of the items under that topic has to do with the digital age in which we're living, and things that are retrievable and would fall under that. What kind of sources make those requests of UNC Charlotte for public records?
I mean, we get some media requests, and then a lot of times it's just an interested party who may know that, a professor or, or somebody sent an email on this issue and they just want to learn about it.
Sure.
And we're trying to, again, get that message out. All email is public record. If you have your personal laptop at home, but you're doing university business, that's public record. And then there's also a new exemption that I think Dave's going to talk about in that session that's related to research. And so I'm sure that faculty would be very interested in hearing that there is a little more leeway that we didn't have before. And
I'm by virtue of what I do, am aware most of the times when there's a request from the media for an open records request. But one of the things that I've noticed in recent years is a shift. If a reporter is out there working on a story, it seems more often than not now that in the very first phase of doing a story, the request for records comes in. And I think maybe in the old days we probably saw a little bit more of that. Was kind of down the line after they'd maybe ascertained whether there's a real story there or not. And I think what we're seeing now is, send me all that stuff, because the days of the old-fashioned having to print it out and staple it and that kind of thing are maybe eased up a bit, because you can just send them a digital file and it's easy because we have you guys here to do that for us. Right?
Well, and particularly Tina Daddia, who is our public records officer and paralegal, she is a tremendous resource for all things Public Records Act. And but you're exactly right.
And I assume that approach spreads well beyond the media in terms of, well, it's information. It must be easily retrievable. Let me ask you to pile all that up for me first, so that I can then do my own personal inquiry into what's going on at the university.
That's exactly right. And she coordinates. She might get that request, It might be for emails. Emails might mention somebody else at the university, so she coordinates between all units to make sure everybody knows what's coming. You mentioned retrievable. I think part of what Dave and Tina are going to get across is everything is retrievable.
Right.
Everything. So, be careful.
Except our thoughts.
Well, not yet.
Yeah. I can't even retrieve my own thoughts, honestly. And then Title IX, again, I think, not to give that short shrift in our discussion here, but the fact that we did just talk about it for a half hour here on the live wire, but I think this is, if you were to make a general statement about Title IX, this is an area that is kind of definitely growing, and we all need a much broader awareness. It's not just athletics. It's not just one thing anymore. So.
And that's the goal of this session, is to really kind of, instead of diving into all this, Office for Civil Rights and Department of Education guidance, to step back and say, how did we get where we are, and what has happened from the years of when people would hear Title IX and think women's athletics to where we are now, and where it might be going in the future, because all of this attention on sexual violence and interpersonal violence and the guidance that has come down federally is having repercussions and reactions from folks all across the country. So it's we're going to put on our Swami hats and make some predictions.
And we also often get the question, this is a crime, why is the university dealing with it? And so, again, if we can step back and explain, that we're not jumping in, necessarily just because we didn't have anything else to do. We have certain obligations, and, here's how the law evolved. And so this will be a sort of a broader look and a broader overview.
All right, well, it's our hope that in discussing this today, that folks who are part of the university community will go to the Office of Legal Affairs website and then take one more step beyond just the general topic list that we just went through, and note the agenda for the Legal Affairs Symposium coming up a week from today. Get started in the morning with breakfast, and then you have a nice calendar here that lets us know which events are at what time, as calendars are known to do. And is the lunch part of the deal?
That's part of the deal.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it is. Part of the deal.
So you would encourage folks to come for a session and stay for a day, right?
That's exactly right.
And we do have a little more explanation on the next page of the agenda about what each session is about.
Sure. And just in case our discussion just now wasn't detailed enough.
Right.
But no, this sounds great. I think it will be very interesting to see the level of turnout this year. And do you hope for the day when it kind of levels off, or do you expect that this will continue to boom in popularity, or if not popularity, urgency?
We hope that we're going to be responsive to the things people want to hear about, and that'll draw more people. So this year we have a bit of a Title IX focus. We did a safety symposium previously, kind of research-related one last year. In the future, we hope this will, say, hey, I really want to know about X, Y, and Z, and that'll get people in the seats.
All right. Well, we want to say thank you to Sarah Edwards and Jesh Humphrey for being with us today to talk about the upcoming legal symposium here at UNC Charlotte a week from today at the SAC in the salons, which are up a level from the concourse with the food court. But it really does look like a very great day full of information that pertains to each one of us who are part of the university community here. And so, again, Sarah and Jesh, thanks for being with us.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
And thank you all for putting us on your screens today. And then next week, be sure to watch closely on Inside UNC Charlotte on the web for program notes about next week's 2 rounds of the Live Wire. And we will look forward to being with you again then and throughout the week on Inside UNC Charlotte. So thanks once again.